It was supposed to be the most beautiful day of her life. A fairy tale wedding. A stunning dress. And the man she loved by her side. But in front of all the guests, the groom did the unthinkable. With a smile on his face, he humiliated her in a way no one saw coming. What he didn't know was that someone was watching. Someone who wouldn't let it go unpunished. Someone standing right behind him. The sun dipped low over the estate, bathing the garden in a warm golden light. The air smelled of roses and lavender, and the soft hum of violins drifted through the air. It was the kind of wedding people imagined in fairy tales. Elegant, expensive, flawless. The bride, Alina, stood near the entrance of the grand hall, her white dress flowing like silk water around her. Her eyes sparkled, but underneath the smile, a nervous flutter twisted in her stomach. Everything was planned down to the last detail. Crystal glasses shimmered on the tables. Floral arrangements lined the aisles like a royal parade. And the guests, all dressed in their finest, whispered compliments about the grandeur of it all. Cameras flashed, videos rolled, and everyone's eyes were on her. But her eyes were on him. Daniel, the groom, looked striking in his tailored suit. He had always been charming, confident, sharp, and just a little too proud of himself. He greeted guests with that familiar grin. The kind that seemed genuine on the surface, but carried a shadow of mockery underneath. Alina tried to ignore it, brushing away her unease as pre-wedding jitters. From afar, they looked like the perfect couple. But those who paid attention could see the cracks, the way Daniel looked at her. Not with love, but as though she were a performance. A display. And tonight, that performance was reaching its final act. As the ceremony began, Alina took a deep breath. Her father, Mr. Idris Khan, a quiet man known for his steel demeanor and past military rank, stood beside her. Few spoke to him directly, but everyone knew of him. A man of few words, but when he spoke, people listened. She clutched his arm tightly, unaware how important his presence would soon become. The vows were said, the rings exchanged. And then came the toast. Daniel stood up, glass in hand, flashing that too confident smile again. Alina turned to him with a hopeful expression. But hope was a fragile thing. He raised his glass, and instead of love, what came out of his mouth would leave the room in stunned silence, and her world shattered. In front of everyone, Daniel tapped his glass gently, and the soft clinking echoed through the grand hall. The guests turned to him, their smiles wide, expecting a sweet tribute to his new bride. The music faded out, and silence followed, the kind that carries anticipation. He stood tall, straightening his tie with a smug little flourish, and then began. "Well," Daniel said, his voice smooth. "Where do I begin?" Alina smiled faintly, waiting for the words she dreamed of. A few kind lines about love, gratitude, a funny story maybe. But Daniel had something else in mind. "I've always said relationships are an investment, time, patience, and let's be honest, money." Laughter, awkward and uncertain, rippled through the room. Alina's smile froze. "I mean, look around," he continued, gesturing with a flourish to the venue. "Top tier. The dress, custom-made, of course. Flowers from Italy. Gold cutlery from Paris. No expense spared, because my bride deserves only the best, right?" His tone dripped with sarcasm. The grin never left his face. "I've tolerated quite a bit to get to this day," he added. Planning drama, those long chats about feelings." He rolled his eyes. "But in the end, here we are. And I guess you could say she's a very lucky woman." The hall went silent. Gasps. A few uncomfortable coughs. Guests shifted in their seats. Alina stared at him, her heart pounding in her ears. This wasn't a toast. It was a spectacle. A public humiliation dressed as humor. She felt heat rising in her cheeks. Her fingers curled into her dress. Daniel chuckled to himself, sipping from his glass, completely unaware of how deeply he'd cut her. Or maybe he knew. Maybe that was the point. And then a sound behind him. Soft but commanding. A single chair scraping back. Everyone turned. A man had stood up at the back of the hall, his face unreadable, his posture straight as a blade. Alina's father, Mr. Idris Khan. He began to walk forward. Slowly, deliberately. His steps were measured, but each one struck the marble like a gavel. Daniel didn't notice. Not yet. But everyone else did. The air had shifted. And something was coming that Daniel never saw, until it was too late. The marble echoed with every step Idris Khan took. He wasn't a loud man. Never needed to be. But silence itself seemed to fold around him. Every guest turned. Conversations died. Even the chandeliers seemed to stop swinging. Alina, still frozen at the table, slowly looked up. Her father was walking. Not fast, not angry, but with a stillness that made the moment heavier than any shout ever could. Daniel finally noticed. The sudden hush. The attention shifting away from him. He turned and saw the man behind him. For the first time that night, Daniel's smile faltered. Idris didn't speak. His eyes, sharp, calm, and unreadable, locked onto Daniel. There was no emotion, no threat, just presence. A kind of cold authority that couldn't be faked. The kind men develop through years of commanding rooms that demand respect, or fear. Sir, Daniel started, laughing nervously, holding up his hands. I was just joking, of course. You know how weddings are, just a bit of fun. Idris didn't blink. He didn't nod. He didn't need to. The security at the estate were professionals. Former military, some whispered. They had been hired discreetly for the wedding, not for show, but for assurance. Two of them stepped forward. Calm. Expressionless. Daniel's voice cracked. Wait, you're not serious. No one answered. No shouting. No drama. Just action. One guard gently took Daniel's glass. The other stepped beside him and whispered something only he could hear. Daniel's face drained of color. He looked at Alina, now standing tall. Still shaking, but no longer broken. Alina, please, he said. This is insane. She didn't speak. Not because she couldn't, but because she didn't need to for the first time that evening, Daniel understood something. This wasn't about him anymore. It never was. He was escorted out, not dragged, not shamed, but removed like a stain being cleaned from white silk. The silence returned as the doors closed behind him, and in it, Alina stood in the center of the room, surrounded by stunned guests, shattered flowers, and quiet gasps. But in her eyes now clarity. The celebration was over, but no one moved. It was as if the entire room had turned into a still photograph, capturing a moment too powerful to fade easily. Alina stood at the edge of the dance floor, where the soft light still twinkled overhead. The arch of flowers behind her swayed in the breeze. The music had long since stopped, but something had begun. Her hands, once trembling, now rested calmly at her sides. The pain was there, yes, but it had transformed. Hardened. Strengthened. People were still staring. Some with pity, some with admiration, many with shock. But she didn't look at them. Her eyes were fixed ahead, on the space where Daniel once stood, now empty. She walked forward. Each step was quiet, but in her mind, it echoed. Not because of what she had lost, but because of what she had reclaimed, herself. Mr. Idris Khan remained in the corner now, arms folded, watching his daughter. Not as a protector, but as a witness to her transformation. He had raised her to stand tall, to never bow. And now, she was finally doing just that, not for the world, not for anyone else, for herself. A woman approached her, a guest who had known Alina since childhood. She opened her mouth to offer comfort, but Alina raised her hand gently. Only need, she said softly. I'm fine. Because she was not fine in the way people say to hide their pain, but fine in the way forged steel is fine after fire. She was no longer the girl waiting for love. She was the woman who would no longer beg for respect. That night, the celebration did not continue. But it didn't end in tragedy either. It ended in truth. Some guests left in stunned silence. Others came to her, offering quiet words. But everyone knew they had witnessed something rare, a bride who didn't break, but rose. And as Alina walked out into the night, her dress trailing behind her like a fallen crown, the stars above flickered like they knew something too. This wasn't the end of a love story. It was the beginning of her legend. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us. Respect isn't given, it's earned, and sometimes silence speaks louder than 1,000 words.